Hey everybody. So I thought we'd start off the week this week with a video that's a bit more practical and just kind of start with a bang here and get you some tools right away, beginning with this tool today that you can use immediately to start to feel better if you've been overloaded, stressed out, dealing with anxiety or any sort of state, if you're caught up in some sort of a story that you've been kind of wrestling with about yourself or about someone else or the world around us, whatever it might be that you might be dealing with, if you've been overloaded and over kind of stressed out, this is a perfect tool to begin to help you out. And super quick before we dive into the content today, I just want to say a quick warm welcome to you if you are a new viewer to the channel, new to my videos, or if you're a return viewer as well. My name is Dave. I'm a coach. I'm a hypnotherapist. I work with people around a lot of different topics that include things like psychedelics and psychedelic integration, healing work, awakening, personal development work, all this kind of stuff. And that's what we tend to talk about here on the channel, kind of that intersection of what it means to awaken, self-actualize, psychologically and emotionally heal, using psychedelics or all kinds of different modalities and techniques along that approach and really getting us to the goal. So if that's your thing, then you're in the right place. And I'm honored to have you aboard for the conversation. Thanks for your viewing. Let's go ahead and get into the main content. So one of the things in NLP and hypnosis education that I've been mentored by my coaches over and over and over that I think is such an important, juicy detail to understand about self-healing and self-actualization and leveling up is that the more flexibility we have in ourselves, the more flexibility of thought, flexibility of emotion, flexibility of behavior, and even flexibility of being, if that makes sense. The more flexibility we have, the more likely we are to find a way of getting to where we want to go and feeling the way we want to feel. In other words, the more we're locked into one way of behaving, one way of thinking, one way of emoting, one way of being, the more likely we are to suffer, to fail, to miss the mark, and to generally have a rougher time in life. So in the spirit of that knowledge, in the spirit of that understanding, I'm a huge advocate of developing as many tools and skills and kind of pulling them all together. The way I was taught, the kind of background that I really learned from is integrative hypnosis, and integrative truly means pulling from any modality possible in order to bring the best of the best together and help people really create that powerful, potent transformation. So in the spirit of all that today, that all of that is to say that I want to give you guys a super easy, simple, but very powerful tool that you can use right away to start to, again, get more space, get more distance, get more empowerment in relationship to whatever it is that might be stressing you out in your life right now. So this technique is what's considered a top-down technique. So I've mentioned top-down, bottom-up before, but for anyone who's new or doesn't remember, top-down are techniques where we're using the conscious, rational mind to kind of influence our state, our emotion, our physiology, our bodies, as opposed to bottom-up, which is generally more of the work that I do with people, which is more where we're using our physiology, our body, our state, our emotions, and communicating more directly with the nervous system to create change that then turns into new insight and new understanding kind of after the fact. So you can go either way here. You can go either way. You can go top down or bottom up. I recommend having skills that connect to both. But in this video, this approach is going to be top down because sometimes when we're already overloaded, we're already stressed out, we're frustrated about something or anxious or dealing with a trigger or something like that, sometimes it's really useful to have a top-down tool or two in your kind of tool belt that you can bust out and use on yourself and start to feel better. So that's what we've got in store here. So let's go ahead and let me explain the tool and explain why I think it's super useful and how you can use it. Okay, without any further ado, let's go ahead and just get you the tool, and then I'll explain to you why I think it's so powerful and how you can use it. So the tool is just a simple phrase that you want to apply to yourself whenever you're feeling overloaded and stressed and overwhelmed and, whatever big emotion might be coming up for you. And the phrase is, I am feeling the story of blank right now, whatever blank would be for you. So I am feeling the story of example right now. So I know that's very simple, but let me explain to you why this is so effective and how this works. So for some of you, you may recognize this as something very similar to what you might learn in, say, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. This is also something you could really understand as being some self-applied NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming. So you can look at it from either of those lenses. But basically what we're doing here is a few things with this phrase. So let's say I'm stressed out because money, right? Common stressor for a lot of people. So, and maybe I'm ranting and I'm worrying and I'm anxious about money. I might say, I'm really feeling the story of, and then name the exact complaint I'm having about money. I have no money. I won't be able to pay my bills. I'm frustrated with my financial life, or whatever it is right now. Another example might be, let's say someone really upset me. I'm really like irritated and I have a lot of judgment, and, I'm feeling really kind of righteous because somebody said something and I'm like, screw them or whatever, right? So I might say, I'm really feeling the story of judgment right now, or I'm really feeling the story of blaming this person right now, or I'm really feeling the story of, that this was unfair right now, or whatever my personal story around that experience is. So this can be applied to any area of life where you're having an issue, where you're having a struggle, whether it's about yourself, whether it's about your circumstance and situation, whether it's about your relationships, whether it's about, the universe, the cosmos, God, whether it's about politics, whatever it is that's vexing you and stressing you out. This is something you can use to start to get a bit more space and a bit more empowerment in relationship too. So let me explain what's happening here with this turn of phrase for anyone who likes to know a little bit more about why this works. There's a few reasons I really like this particular turn of phrase. I am really feeling the story of right now. So there's a few things going on here kind of subtly in the linguistics that are very healing and very empowering. So the first thing is that we are saying, I am feeling, right? So we are acknowledging that we are feeling something. So generally speaking, a lot of times, a lot of kind of reframe type statements, a lot of these kind of CBT approaches can often be very dishonoring of our felt experience. They can kind of invalidate our emotions, kind of invalidate the not rational, feeling-based, response-based, reaction-based part of ourselves that cares about something enough to be upset in the first place. So usually if we're stressed, we're overwhelmed, we're upset, there's something we care about that's being rattled or challenged or upset in some way. And so naturally, of course, we have feelings in response to that. So when we say, I am feeling, we're acknowledging and honoring that, right? So it's so cool because we're not repressing, we're not denying, we're not ignoring, we're not trying to just rationalize and make, be brainy about our emotions. We're acknowledging we are having an emotional experience. So I am feeling the story though. So this is the other part of it. So one of the things that we know through neurolinguistic programming, or hypnosis or anything else like that, one of the core ideas is that human beings live through narratives, that we define ourselves, that we define our experience of life around us through a set of stories, through a narrative. And this is really kind of personal development 101. If you've never thought about this thought before, consider how everything you experience throughout your day is built and framed in a particular narrative that creates a certain set of meanings for you. Whether those meanings are disempowering or empowering, upsetting or, relieving, we all have certain sets of stories that we use as filters to make sense of the events that happen internally and externally in our life around us. And the understanding in NLP is that we don't actually have emotional responses directly to our raw experience. What we have responses to, what our emotions are actually in relationship to, is the narrative. So we have a narrative, we have a story about ourselves, about life, about our parents, about whatever, about, Trump or, global politics or whatever the thing is that we have a story about. We have a story, and then we have emotions in response to that story, right? So what we do with this phrase, we say, I am feeling the story of. So we are acknowledging, one, that we have feelings. So we're not denying our own feelings, but two, we're also acknowledging that that's in relationship to a story. That's in relationship to a narrative we're telling ourselves. And by acknowledging that it's a narrative, then we can kind of step back enough to have a little bit of choice about the narrative we're telling ourselves, and we can kind of examine it and explore it as a narrative. If we confuse our narrative for reality, which most people do most of the time, if we confuse our narrative for reality and truth itself, then we narrow down the set of perspectives on what's going on, right? So we filter out all the other possible explanations or, insights or pieces of wisdom, which means we also cut ourselves off from our own power, from our own wisdom, from our own truth, from our own flexibility again, from our own ability to adapt or pivot or, roll the idea around in a new light, because all of those things require a certain amount of understanding that we're only seeing it from one perspective. So if we confuse that one perspective for the whole truth, we're sunk, right? Then we confuse our emotions for reality as well. And then we're just, we're become victims, basically. That's the anatomy of becoming a victim, right? So how we unvictimize ourselves, how we find empowerment, is to find a bit of distance and a bit of space enough to recognize that we have emotions. Those emotions are in relationship to a story we're telling ourselves. So the story, again, could be anything, could be negative, could be positive, could be neutral, right? And the story we often will confuse for the truth. We will be convinced that our story is the whole truth. But if you think about it just logically or rationally, that could not be the case. There's no way that our single vantage point on anything, like this lighter, for example, right? There's more information about this lighter than I can possibly know simply by holding it and looking at it. For example, I'm only looking at one side of the lighter. I don't know what the bottom of the lighter looks like right now. I don't know what the side facing you looks like right now. I don't know how much fluid is inside the lighter. I don't know what plastics were used to create the lighter. I hope you're starting to get my point here. There's so much about everything around us that we don't know, but we don't consider that we don't know because we're so busy fixating on our one single narrative about whatever it is we're experiencing. So in this turn of phrase here of I am feeling the story of, we create the ability to, one, acknowledge our own felt sense. Two, we acknowledge that that sense is in relationship to a story, and then we name the story, right? And so I don't know what it is that's upsetting you, so I can't use your own content as an example, but for example, it could be anything. Again, it could be a relationship, could be an event, could be something about yourself. Let's say it's social anxiety. I'm feeling the story that I'm lame. I'm feeling the story that people will judge me. I'm feeling the story that I'm low status. I'm feeling the story that, that nobody likes me. I'm feeling the story that I'm all alone and I will be abandoned over and over. Whatever the belief or the narrative or the emotion or the thing that we're telling ourselves that gets us so upset in the first place is, right? So, and then we end it with right now, because we're acknowledging that we're feeling a story about whatever the story is. So we're honoring the story, but we're also saying it's right now. This is something I'm feeling right now, which that assumes that may not be the case in the future. That assumes that this could change, that I could feel something else soon, that I could feel a different way about the same subject, that I could find a new story. So it honors a lot of possibility in this one sentence. And it creates just enough space, in my experience, just enough distance that we start to honor ourselves without feeding into the loop. Because what happens when you confuse your story for the truth, pardon me, I'm going to drink a little bit of water here. Throat getting dry there. As we confuse our story for the truth, then we start to tell the story, and the more we tell the story, the more we get the emotion, the more ramped up we get about it, and the more we tend to fixate more on the story and tell more about the story, and it becomes this feedback loop where we get ourselves really, really worked up about something. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. This is a near universal human experience. We all get ourselves worked up about something. And so by using this simple turn of phrase, I'm feeling the story of blank, whatever it is right now, all of a sudden you create enough space that you can go, okay, yeah, this is a story. Okay, yeah, this is something I'm telling myself over and over and over that is getting me ramped up. Okay, yeah, this is something that's just in this moment right now. And as I acknowledge that it's a story, and as I acknowledge that I'm ramping myself up and getting myself worked up over something, and as I acknowledge that it's just in this moment, all of a sudden that gives me a little bit of room to wonder, okay, what else could I feel? What else could I think about this? How else could I see this? And even if nothing else comes to mind, you're at least just honoring this. Okay, this is what's going on here inside of me right now. You're not owning it. You're not confusing it for the truth. You're not confusing it for reality, God forbid. You are not letting it define your entire experience. You're simply saying, this is what's happening in my nervous system right now. I'm feeling the story of right now. And so try it out. I encourage you to play with this and explore it and just see what happens. It's really subtle, but very powerful what happens when we use language to self-regulate. So again, this is top down, which means the feelings will already be there and we need some way to regulate the feelings. So this is for when you're stressed. This is for when you're overwhelmed. This is for, I guess you could use this, theoretically in a positive sense too. Like if you're blissed out and you're ecstatic and you're having the best day, if you want to kind of just get a little space from that and kind of create some mindfulness, because this is essentially a mindfulness type practice. You could also do that then. I'm feeling the story of life is great right now, or whatever it is. And by doing this over and over as a habit, you start to build up this awareness and this feedback, this self-feedback that creates a sense of support to your emotional self, a sense of acknowledgement, a sense of self-love, without overindulging in your emotions in a way that's destructive or kind of, holds you back. So anyways, give it a try. Try it out. I found this super useful over the last week. Like I said, I had some setbacks last week that were kind of frustrating and upsetting. I had a couple days where I, woke up, and this is rare for me these days. Generally, I'm in a really good mood, but I woke up in a little bit of a, kind of a upset mood, and I would just run this pattern, so instead of ranting and just letting myself rant in my head, I would run this pattern with the rants. So, I'd be ranting about whatever the problem was, and I am feeling the story of blah, blah, blah right now. And it really helped to just bring it down a few notches, create some peace, create some spaciousness, create some safety in myself to honor my own experience without getting caught up and swept away with it. So anyways, I hope this serves you. Play with it and let me know, leave a comment down below. How does this resonate for you? Does this make sense? Do you find this useful? Is this something you'll use? Do you like this top-down approach, or do you want just to shift the way you feel and have that turn into new insight? What makes more sense to you? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys real soon.